We are here to talk about 3 tips to improve your rein contact. This is a big issue.
Yeah, lately in the courses we had a
and
lot
in the free
of
groups.
in the free groups. So we had a lot of questions about rein contact, different aspects of rein contact, and of course, you know, rein contact is one of those things that people struggle with for a very long time. And I mean, we did too.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so we had a lot of questions about rein contact, and you know, everybody probably struggles with rein contact for a while. It's like, you know, how do I get the horse on the bit? How do I get the horse round? And all these things. You know, it starts at this very basic thing. How do I get the head down, right, when you're a beginner? Because that's apparently what you're supposed to do, right? That's what everybody says. And then it gets more sophisticated from there, like how much, you know, weight should I have in my hands? And, you know, what do I do if there's a resistance? What do I, you know, and then it goes into different directions.
Right. This is one of those things that I think no rider is immune from. Every single rider has to go through the experience of struggling with this. So it's pretty universal.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And yeah.
Or every dressage rider, I should say. Yeah. Because it's not necessarily vital in every other discipline, right?
It plays a slightly different role in different disciplines, but for dressage it's important. And the thing is, in dressage, the rein contact is a reflection of the horse's training overall. It's a reflection of the balance and the straightness and the suppleness and the impulsion and the connectedness, you know, between horse and rider. And so you can interpret, you know, the rein contact, and you can get a lot of information from the rein contact about the horse and the state of the musculature and the balance and all the other things, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very complex topic, which is why it's not so easy to teach, and it's such a feel, you know, issue in a way, right? The good riders have a certain feel in their body, and they have a certain seat that they assume, and then the horse goes on the bit, right? And then the beginner who doesn't have that yet struggles, and then if they ask a good rider to teach them how to create a good rein contact, and the good riders often don't know really what to say because they can't put it into words, right? And I mean, it happened you know, to me as a beginner too, that my teacher said, well, you have to ride the horse more on the bit.
It's like, well, yeah, but how?
I thought I would love to, but tell me how.
Oh, gee, yeah.
And they couldn't really explain that very well, because they were very good riders and very field-based natural riders.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, so that wasn't helpful.
But we've noticed over the years that this is something that all riders struggle with. And so we wanted to come up with ways of making the concepts easier to understand, to smooth the process more for you. Yeah. So tonight we're going to, or it's night for us, or afternoon, early evening, might not be for you where you are. We're going to talk about 3 tips. There's, of course, many more tips, but we wanted to narrow it down to 3 because that's something you can easily take and put to use in your riding right away. So we wanted to talk about 3 tips you can use to improve your contact.
Yeah, you know, there are always horse aspects to everything, and there are rider aspects. And today we want to talk a little bit about both, actually, but start with the seat.
Yeah, before you move on, though, we do have a free PDF, so I'm going to put the URL in here. You can go sign up and download it. You can do it when this is over, too. That's fine. It's not a big deal. You can send it to your friends, whatever you want to do. It's fine. You can share it. I'm going to put that in here, and then we can get going.
Yeah.
Okay, there's the PDF, and I have to go into Zoom and give them the PDF too.
Yep, lots of people in Zoom.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. So I wanted to start with a seat aspect. One thing that I had to kind of learn the hard way is that you will only really be able to get the horse on the bit and through the back if you are well connected within your seat, right? So if you have a connection from your hips to your elbows or rib cage to upper arms, depending on how long your torso is and how long your upper arms are, right? So I have relatively long arms, so I can attach my elbows pretty much to my pelvis, right? If somebody has a long torso, short arms, then they may not reach, right? They may have
my
to
elbow is way up here,
right.
whereas his elbow is way down here for him.
So the connecting point is somewhere in different locations depending on how you build.
But it still works.
But you need a connection so that essentially there is an energy connection, an energy circuit from the hind legs through your midsection and to the bit, and then from there back through the reins, through your midsection to the hind legs. And I discovered at some point that if I don't have enough density around my lumbar spine, if not enough torso muscle engagement, not enough connection between my body and the reins, then the horses fight. Even if I have a very, very light contact and try to give very, very light aids, the horses will get annoyed with that and they will not accept it. They don't understand it. They don't see the point. Whereas if you create that connection from your seat to your arms, then the horse will go into the contact and he's content there and it somehow makes sense to him, and then they accept half falls and then you can work, right? So that was a big discovery, that I have to have this connection. My teachers had explained it sometimes by saying your rein aids have to be backed up by the body weight, right? Or the reins have to be connected to the body weight. Which is true. Yeah, which is true. Exactly. Yeah. And it's a feel in my body. It's a certain
connectedness
stretch.
In the body.
Yeah, it's a stretch of my body, and then, like I said, this attachment of the upper arms or elbows to the body, so that I almost feel like my forearms are attached to my pelvis and not to the shoulders.
I was going to say, it's a stability that feels like you can't be broken up. And it's not a stability that comes from being rigid or hard. It's a very dynamic stability, but it's a stability. The horse cannot, whatever he does, he cannot tear you apart. So that there's a wholeness to you.
Yeah, if you have that connection and the horse leans on you or roots and pulls against the rein, he will pull your pelvis forward, right?
Rather than, and we've probably all had this experience where the horse tugs on the reins and you get pulled forward like this. That only happens when the elbows are not really connected. Doesn't mean they have to be clamped on, but there has to be this kind of magic zone, right? Where the elbows stay connected to the torso. If they come too far forward, you're gonna get broken apart. Also, there has to be stability to the seat at the same time.
Right. Yeah, and you can check it. You can scan your body and see where does the contact go that the horse makes with the reins. Like, does it travel up your arm to your shoulder?
Does it get stuck there?
Yeah, if it does, it gets stuck. It's a dead end usually.
Yeah.
Then
you end up with this tug of war between your arms and the horse, and that's a no-go.
Yeah, it's very hard to connect the rein contact back to the hind legs, right? So it's very hard to apply a half hold, and put your body weight behind the half hold if the rein contact gets stuck up in your shoulders. But if the rein contact that the horse makes travels along your forearm to your elbow, from your elbow to your pelvis, from your pelvis to the horse's pelvis, then you have a connection. If the horse pulls on you, he'll pull your pelvis forward and half hold himself. And you can then half hold, with your body weight and just closing your fingers a little bit. And then you create a reaction in the hind legs of the horse, right? And it will go through essentially. Whereas if you don't have that connection, the half holds won't go through. And a lot of horses get very irritated and annoyed if you don't have that connection.
Rightfully so, because it's uncomfortable for them too. Right. So you owe it to yourself, but you also owe it to your horse to work on this.
Yeah, and if you have this connection, it's almost like your forearms and hands become an extension of your pelvis. It feels like they are a part of your pelvis, right? You feel like fingers, wrists, forearms, and reins are like one and the same thing, right? It's like you can't tell, where does the rein end, where does my arm begin? and you can relax your forearms and wrists very much, right? And you feel like the reins are more attached to your pelvis or to your back muscles, you know, or oblique muscles. So you feel like you can hold the reins almost with these torso muscles rather than with the arms. So you're not holding the reins with your bicep or tricep or something. You're really holding them more with your torso muscles, you know, which is a kind of interesting feeling. And then you can try and relax your arm, hand, wrist, fingers completely and see, well, how, at what point does the horse start to pull the reins away from you?
Try to transfer any tone that you have in your arms to your midsection, to your core muscles, essentially, or, you know, however you want to put it. But you transfer it to your seat rather than your arms. So anything that you have here that you're carrying here, try to hand that off. It's like, it's not the job of your hands. It's not the job of your arms to hold this weight. Transfer it to your seat.
Right. Yeah. So you feel like you're anchoring the horse, you know, holding the horse with your seat rather than
and so that
your
you
hands,
can be feather light with your rein contact then.
So any weight the horse wants to put into the bit that's, you know, too much, more than you like, then gets absorbed with your torso and with the you know, the muscles around your lumbar spine, and then sent on essentially to the hindquarters, right? And then as you flex the hind legs of the horse through your body weight and through the half walls, when the hind legs flex, the horse gets lighter in front. Again, right? Whereas, if you don't have the connection, you may end up holding more and more weight, and then you hold it with your arms, totally and the horse leans on you, you lean on the horse. It's like two drunk people, right, who stabilize each other, so to speak. And that's exactly. And then, but if you have that density around your lumbar spine, then you can refer any excess pressure the horse puts onto the bit back to the hind legs. Flex the hind legs, release again, and then the horse lightens up again, right? It's this feedback loop, essentially, right? So whatever pressure the horse puts into your hand gets recycled through your seat and through the reins to the hind legs. It flexes the hind legs, and then as the hind legs flex, the horse can lift his forehand a little bit, and then he doesn't have to bear down on the bit anymore. All right.
So we did have one little question real quick. Yulia Karnaeva says, both English and Western rein contact is the same.
Not really.
Or not, the objective is not the same.
Good question. Good question. A lot of Western riders want to ride without contact. And that's a problem, because then you cannot...
Problem for what we do in dressage.
Well, you cannot feel the horse's body through the reins. Then you cannot use the horse's head and the weight of the head and neck to flex the hind legs, right? You cannot really create collection. The horses that are ridden without contact are typically on the forehand. They're typically strung out and very stiff.
At least the horses that are ridden that way all the time. Now, once you've achieved a level of lightness and collection and so on, then you can ride with a lighter or even at times a looped rein, or when you see, for example, people riding without a bridleless riding. The really well-trained horses that are doing this really well were trained on contact, and they're so well trained that you can prove it by taking off the bridle and riding with just the seat or just the neck rein, you know.
It's this riding with a looped rein is more of a finished product. It's not the way, right? Not the path.
You don't get there by riding without contact.
Like you see engravings, engravings from the 17th, 18th century where the old masters ride with a curb bit and then slightly looped reins. But that was the end of a longer training process. They would start with cabeçon and a set of reins, and a bit with a set of reins, right? And they would work the horses and give them, a degree of collection. And once the horses were strong enough and supple enough to really sit on the hind legs permanently, more or less, then they could, remove the cabeçon and the cabeçon reins, and they could just have the horse with a curb bit with the two reins. And these curb bits had long shanks, and they often had, they're similar to spade bits in Western riding in some ways. They had a lot of stuff in the mouth. And
Right.
so the shape and the weight of the bit already made the horses put the
It exerted a
head
pressure.
vertical to avoid any, unpleasant
Right,
you
and
know,
it
run-ins
exerted
with
a
the
pressure.
bit. Right.
Right.
And they had reins that ended in little chains. So the reins had a certain weight, right? So when they were talking about riding with the weight of the reins as contact, then it was a little different quality or quantity than our modern reins, right? So it's not, you can't compare that
we can still
one-to-one.
do this to a degree, but
Right.
again, it's towards the end of the
Yeah,
training or
exactly.
as
Yeah.
brief periods to test
Yeah.
the quality of your work. You can give the rein and test that the horse will
Right.
stay in balance and in collection and round and so on, and he'll stay with you. He won't fall on the forehand or fall out of the gate or fall apart, right?
Yeah,
He stays together even when you give the rein, and that's the true test that the horse is really on the seat and well trained.
Yeah, the Überstreichen that we have in dressage, that would be a test, right? You can either release one rein, or the other rein, or you can release both reins. And if you have the horse in self-carriage and on the seat, then they should stay there, right?
And it's
not fall
worthwhile.
apart, right?
Yeah, it's very
It's a good
worthwhile
test.
thing
Yeah,
to do.
yeah, definitely.
And there's a certain value to doing this periodically throughout
absolutely.
the ride anyway, to make that invitation to the horse to carry himself.
Right. But if you try to ride without that contact for half an hour, then gradually the horse will slip, right? You'll feel him
And you're not going to get to where
apart.
you want to go in your training.
Yeah. So it's the riding with the looped rein is more of an end product. It's really the finished result of the completely trained horse. Yeah. And it requires also a certain conformation in the horse. Like not every horse is built to be able to collect himself to that extent. That they're really together and round and up and light. So that you can ride with a looped rein. So.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
So, because we finished item number 1, right? The first tip is to have this connection in the seat, basically, that the elbows and the seat are connected.
Right. Yeah, and then another important factor, of course, is the horse's balance. So you have to bring both hind legs under the body and flex them, right? And you can do this with there's certain exercises. You can bring the hind legs under the body by sidestepping, and then you can literally sit on the hind legs, right? You can use your seat to flex the hind legs.
It can depend on the issues of the horse and the conformation of the horse too. We can use it with sidestepping, transitions.
Yeah, you can flex it with the down transitions. You can flex the hind legs also by riding turns.
Or just sequences of transitions, sort of working towards half steps and piaffe. This can be really helpful too. It doesn't mean you have to do those things to get your horse there. We're just showing you all the different ways.
Yeah, and so these engaging, the hind legs and sitting on them will create typically a lighter contact, will create a more uphill balance. With some horses have this habit of always letting one hind leg lag behind or sticking it out to the side because of their crookedness. So you feel like with that horse, you can only get a good contact if you constantly remind that one hind leg to stay there, right? Because
or keep inviting it to come under.
Once it's there, it will try to leave again, right? Then you have to bring it back, sit on it, and then it will leave again.
And when it leaves, the horse falls apart.
Right, exactly. They get crooked.
Ring contact deteriorates, the connection overall through all of the aids, the network of the aids deteriorates.
Exactly. And a good way to bring one hind leg under the body is with little sidestepping with a bend against the direction of travel. So a very simple example would be enlarging the circle. That's maybe the simplest form of sidestepping.
Think of it, if you don't know what this is already, it's something that we do a lot in all of our courses. Almost, I think every single one of our courses, we do this exercise because it's so vital. It's just absolutely important. So it's where you take the inside hind leg and you ask it to step towards the outside shoulder, sort of like what we do in a shoulder in, but you're on a circle line. So it's not riding a shoulder in on a circle line. It's like you're taking that circle and making it just a little bit bigger. You're inviting the horse to make the circle a little bit bigger. And in the process, you're bringing the inside hind underneath the center of gravity.
Yeah, so it basically hips and shoulders move a little bit out together. But you could also do a shoulder fore kind of movement where you're asking
which is
the
more
croup
advanced though.
to yield out. Yeah, it's the next step basically. You could do that, like just let the croup yield. It's could be a little bit more like a leg yield, could be more like a shoulder fore, just so that the inside hind leg steps under the body. But the shoulder, you can keep the shoulders where they are and just bring the inside hind leg more under, so the croup moves onto a slightly larger circle. That works really well.
And basically, that's what we're doing in all of our sidestepping exercises. And sidestepping, it begins with the basic quasi leg yield, and it develops into the shoulder fore, shoulder in. It's everything. All the sides, all the lateral movements are sidestepping movements. There's also turn on the forehand, for example. This is a sidestepping exercise. All of these serve to help you to bring the inside hind leg, or sometimes in the case of the outside hind leg, it depends, underneath the center of gravity, so that you can help the horse establish that better contact and connection.
Yeah, exactly. And you can, when you're on a circle, you could let the croup yield slightly to the inside and counterbend a little bit. So then the hind leg is on the outside track, is brought under the body, because sometimes that's the one that leaves. Some horses, it's the inside hind leg that tries to either lag behind or go to the inside, and escape. Sometimes the outside hind leg somehow drifts out, and then you feel like you constantly have to bring that under the body.
And because of the crookedness of the horse, in one direction it may be the inside hind leg, and in the other direction it may be the outside hind leg, which means it's the same hind leg causing you these issues. But that means the way you need to ride the horse on one rein will be slightly different than how you need to ride the horse on the other rein. And that's okay for a while. That's okay. You need to address your horse's individual needs for where he is right now, not the horse that the books say you need to, which is already a straight, balanced, perfect horse, really. No one has that perfect horse.
Right. Yeah. So you will feel probably which hind leg is or tends to leave, and tends not to stay underneath you. And you can, if you can't feel it, you can just test it, right? Let the inside hind leg cross a little bit and engage and see how the horse feels, if he changes for the better. And then you can let the outside hind leg cross a little bit and see if that makes him change for the better. And then you will probably find that it's typically the same hind leg, so like Shana says, in one direction maybe the inside, in the other direction maybe the outside hind leg, that you constantly or have to supervise and frequently remind to stay there so it doesn't leave.
It's not unusual at all, but you also might find, alternatively, that your horse always does better when you engage the inside hind leg a little bit more. Or maybe it's the outside hind leg, but maybe a little more typically, I think it's the inside hind leg, especially in the beginning of the training. That's often the one that's causing the biggest issues. The inside hind leg needs to step under and over a little bit more, and this improves the horse every single time.
The advantage of letting the inside hind leg cross a little bit is that you send the horse towards the outside rein, right? So you can create the circle of eights that way.
Right.
You send the horse from from the inside leg forward and out into the outside rein and leg, and then you can create a connection back. And that's actually our third tip, to connect the hind legs to the ground and to the weight. And you can do this by sitting on them. You can do this by half halting. Half halt could be applied through stirrup pressure, through a pelvic floor, pressure sinking down for a moment. It can be created with a pressure on the rein, half halt on the rein.
Yeah, in fact, we're going to go in depth into the half halt on Thursday. We're going to do a Facebook Live on Thursday and talk about the half halt, because this is such a big issue. We can't cover that along with all of this in one. So I thought, okay, let's do a separate one on the half halt.
And the other ways of flexing the hind legs would be to ride a corner, 90-degree turn, right, in 3 steps of the inside hind, or a volte too. Any smaller turns, circles, smaller circles will transfer the weight of the forehand into the inside hind leg.
Yeah.
Figure eights are good for that. Then you alternate between left and right hind leg. Turns on the haunches, of course. Shift the weight into the inside hind leg. Down transitions can be used to transfer the weight into a hind leg. So you can half vault, into a specific hind leg to create a down transition to a lower gait or to the halt. That's even more effective. You can rein back to flex the hind legs and create this connection to the weight and to the ground, right? And you can combine it, right? You can do a corner and stop and rein back, and so you can combine it in a number of ways, right?
Yeah.
So to intensify the effect, so to speak, right?
Right.
But and this engaging the hind legs so that they step under the center of gravity, and then connecting them to the weight and to the ground. That's a recurrent theme that you need all the time, really, for all kinds of purposes, right? And to create a good rein contact that's not too heavy, not too light, etc. Yeah, that's important, right? That's the central aspect of that.
Yeah. So is that your whole list?
For today. I mean, this is just
amazing.
3 elements out of many, right?
Yeah, out of many. We just wanted to grab 3 to share with you because we don't want to overwhelm you with everything that you need to do. We did have a couple of questions. Giovanni wants to know if the height of the rider, in fact, I'll just read it. I have a feeling that the size of the horse and size of the rider could facilitate or not this connection of arms, pelvis, horse. That's a feeling I have based on my experience. I just would like a comment about things. My height is about 1.80 meters, right?
Yeah.
And my feeling is that, I do better with horses about 1.70 meters height than those smaller, like smaller meaning 1.60 meters. For sure.
Size of horse and rider does play a role, definitely.
It does, and the weight then too.
Like if you have a very small, lightweight rider on a big, heavy horse, then of course their weight has much less impact, right? So they probably have to work a lot harder for the horse to feel the half walls. They probably have to engage their muscles around the torso more. They have to sit down harder. They may have to.
The seat has to be knit together a little bit tighter, a little bit stronger.
And if you're a tall rider on a small horse, you have to be very, very careful. I mean, I always used to ride.
He's tall too.
I'm 1.85 meters, 6'2", and used to ride smaller horses. And you have to, especially with your shoulders, you have to be super careful that because you have a lot of weight and leverage in your upper body, you have to be careful that you're not throwing the horse off balance with bigger movements. And every millimeter you move with your shoulders then has an impact on the smaller horse. So maybe that's what you're feeling, that when you're riding smaller horses, they may overreact sometimes.
Yes.
So that you have to be super careful with how you move your torso and your shoulders. And I think Nuno Oliveira actually said that too, that tall riders on short horses have a harder time than the smaller or medium-sized riders or medium-sized horses, or big riders on tall horses. Yeah. So that definitely plays a role. The relative weight, of horse and rider, and
you need to be well suited for each other, body-wise.
Right.
Yeah. And if you're not, it doesn't mean you have to, get rid of this horse, but you're going to have to be careful. And there's considerations you have to make to compensate or to help your horse. Let's see. We had lots of nice greetings. Susanna Berzin said, I've had an ache in one arm for a few weeks now. Now you've just given me a light bulb moment. Thank you. You are welcome. Yay.
Connection between seat and arms.
Yeah. So, and then let's see here. Sandra Grand says, this is a very difficult concept to explain to some. When they use their arms, it tends to pull their upper bodies forward, which in turn becomes a pulling action. Exactly.
Yeah, that's when you don't have the connection from the torso or the pelvis to the arms. Then, people overuse their arm muscles and pull. Right?
Yes.
And also, if you want to create the connection, like if you feel like your elbows are already a little too far forward, try not to bring your elbows back to your body, because that would be kind of a backward movement, right? But try to bring your pelvis forward, like sit in between your elbows. Right?
It doesn't mean
front.
sitting right on the pommel, though.
Yeah, it's just,
but it's like you're trying to bring yourself and the horse that is underneath you between your elbows.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're bringing the horse with you.
Yeah.
It's not just like belly dancing.
Yeah, bring your body to the hand, to the elbow, rather than your hand to the body. It's just like you bring the horse's body towards the bit rather than bringing the bit or the head of the horse back towards the body, right? It's like a little counterintuitive to move the big body part, right, towards the little one and keeping the little one quiet, right? And human nature is more moving the small pieces, right, towards the big pieces, and that then doesn't work.
For example, like when the rider begins trying to figure out how to get the horse on the bit, they always think of pulling the head back towards them, when what you really want to do is ride the horse up over. So you bring the horse to the bit. It's the same. Exactly. These are related. Okay. So Subo asks, so once a horse has developed self-carriage, you can give contact away and horse can stay connected. If he hasn't developed self-carriage, they will end up on the forehand.
Yeah, so if you're talking about the Überstreichen, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you, that's a test, right? If you do Überstreichen and the horse falls apart, then, well, he wasn't in self-carriage. Then he was
release, and it's a test.
Exactly.
And if the horse immediately speeds up, falls on the forehand, or breaks gait, it means that the horse wasn't, or inverts, exactly, loses balance, all of these, then the horse wasn't really connected fully yet. Might be on the way to getting there, but not fully yet. So it's a good test. It gives you a lot of information. It's worth doing, even if you're not sure. Even if you go to do it and the horse falls apart, well, you've just got good validation that you need to do more work. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you do an Überstreichen with the inside rein and the horse starts to look to the outside, then the bend wasn't correct.
It wasn't correct.
Right?
It's a sure sign that you were achieving your bend just with the rein. What you want to do is be able to give the rein and the horse keeps the bend.
Yeah, so if the horse counter bends when you release the inside rein, it's usually a sign that they're leaning on the inside shoulder, so they're crooked. They're not balanced yet on that line that they're riding, so you have to transfer the weight from the inside shoulder a little bit more to the outside pair of legs, and then the horse will be able to bend and stay vertical to the ground with his legs, right? Whereas if they lean on the inside shoulder, then they're turning a little bit like a motorcycle. They lean into the turn, and then the head and neck tend to go out to compensate, right? For that, so that they don't fall down. Yeah, so that's also one application of the Überstreichen as a test, for self-carriage and correct bend. Yeah.
One of the good things that are in the dressage tests, in my opinion. Okay, so let's see. We had a few other through my elbows into my hips. Suzanne Berzens was saying. Sophie L. Zier asks, how do you encourage the horse to take more contact? I ride a horse that has the tendency to stay behind the bit.
That's a good question. Yeah, you can try different things. I mean, you can, on the one hand, like in the trot, ask him with your seat to push more, because the horse that's behind the aids is not pushing enough with the hind legs, right? So they're staying a little behind the bit. So if you with your back muscles,
even if the horse is going fast, sometimes they curl up and they're not taking the contact, but they're going quickly. It just means that the horse is not really stepping under well.
Yeah, and sometimes you can create more push or get the horse to go forward more with sidestepping.
Yes, I was just going to say that brings us to the sidestepping.
That gets them out of their shell, so to speak. Like the horse that's sucked back is a little like a turtle that has retracted his head and his legs.
Well, the issue is almost always that the horse is not engaging his hind legs, and you get engagement.
Yeah, they're
by
not
bringing the hind legs underneath the center of gravity,
pushing enough, not using the hind legs vigorously enough, right? And sometimes just asking them to push more is enough. Sometimes it's not enough. Then the sidestepping works better. Sometimes like the turn on the forehand in motion, a little bit back and forth, 90 degrees left and right. That can also get them to come out of their shell and go forward. You can try lunging them over ground poles before you ride. That could be good. You do some trot canter transitions at the lunge line, So You don't have to do this under saddle necessarily. You can maybe at least pave the way already at the lunge line so that it's easier once you're on the horse.
Sometimes the answer is riding forward, maybe go into posting trot and riding forward. And sometimes it's not. For some horses, they'll just curl up more and they'll just keep going faster and forward, but they're curled up. And it's because the hind legs are not really, the horse is pushing, but pushing further and further onto the forehand. The hind legs are still staying out behind. The horse is just getting faster and faster.
Yeah. And there are horses that...
so it can come from different things.
Yeah, some horses suck back and get behind the aids because they hold their breath and the rib cage is blocked, muscles are tight around the rib cage. So if you can get them to relax the rib cage through combinations of figure eights and volte left to shoulder in right and back and forth, these kind of things, lots of changes of bend. That gets them to let go around the rib cage and then they will go forward. Some horses suck back because the hips are stiff and tight, so sidestepping, turns on the forehand in motion and things like that will loosen that up. Some horses suck back because they have muscle blockages in the underneck or the pole, so you could do some flexions at the halt with them, loosen up those muscles, and then suddenly the energy will go through. So you may have to research a little bit why the horse is sucking back, where that comes from.
Michelle Dorsey has a question. So should elbows stay stationary, just stay stationary at your side and only forearms move, or can elbows go forward as long as they stay down and connected?
And you have to have this energy connection between your elbow and your body. So there is a little bit of wiggle room, right? You can move your elbows a little forward, but you should always have a certain angle in your elbows, right? People with short arms have the problem that their elbows become too straight very quickly, and that makes them stiff, right? And then when the elbows are too straight, the contact goes up to your shoulders, and then you become stiff in your wrist and so on. So you need a certain angle.
She added more to this. Okay. So she says, I'm asking because the Pilates for dressage instructor wanted elbows to stay at the rider's sides and just use the forearms or turn the body to influence the horse. But it seems to me that it could cause stiffness and bracing. We are all confused concerning this concept.
Yeah, it's always the extremes, you have to avoid. As a guiding or rule of thumb, a guiding idea to have the elbows by your hips is a good idea, but it shouldn't lead to stiffness and bracing, right? So there is a little wiggle room. It depends a little bit. Again, if you have long arms, you have more wiggle room because you can move your elbows a lot more before they're straight, right? The person with a short arm will be, completely extended pretty quickly, and the people with short arms often have to carry their hands a little higher in order to be able to have an angle in your elbow. That's an important aspect. You need to have all your joints in sort of a middle position where they can extend and flex more.
The elbow should never be in its neutral place, right, straight. There are times when you might straighten it, for example, doing the Uber strike, or stretching forward downward. You might open the elbows and have the horse stretch, but that is not our neutral place, right? The neutral place, there needs to be a bend in the elbow, and it needs to stay. It can be dynamic. It doesn't. It's not locked and solid. But it should stay within the vicinity of the seat. There's kind of like this magic realm here, and the elbow has to stay within like this magnetic zone here. And if it gets too far away from that, like for example, when the elbow comes over here, riders that ride with the elbows out here, they lose the connection of the horse. They end up riding with just the hands because the elbow is no longer connecting the hand to the seat. When you fix it and bring the elbow in more, doesn't locked in. It's not. It's not static.
Not a straitjacket.
No straitjacket riding. No robots.
Yeah, the old masters always said you should let your upper arms hang, so they basically hang vertically, but be relaxed. Right?
Yeah, relaxed.
Don't clamp them on, don't stick them off. It's like a happy medium, a healthy medium.
There's movement allowed. It's just we're not calling you waving around up there. No chicken arms.
Yeah, and in your neutral dressage seat, all joints have to be in a position where they can open and close. If they're too close to an end position, then it creates a stiffness usually, right? So you shouldn't have your in your neutral position. You shouldn't sit like this.
You shouldn't ride like this.
But it shouldn't be like this. Exactly. Some people have their arms a little too far here, and then there's no more room for them to flex the elbows or to bring the hands closer to the body. On the other hand, if you're stretched out like this, then
there's no room to get.
Yeah, you can't move anymore. Exactly. Or the people who ride with completely open hands and fingers, they've given everything away. They can't really release anymore so easily, right? With their hands, it's like you have to
find the middle road.
Find a happy medium, a healthy medium that allows you to be comfortable and relaxed and effective and still powerful in your seat, right?
Okay, Beverly Margaret Smith says, I always think of moving a car seat forward. And that is great.
That's a good picture.
Yeah, absolutely.
That works. Yeah.
Morgan Osborne had a long question. We can only take one or two more. So if we don't get to all of them, I'm sorry. You can go into our Ritter Dressage free group and ask in there and just tag us, and we'll try to get back to you in there. Morgan Osborne said, long post question. My oldie hasn't got much room in the throat latch. That's an issue. Conformational difficulty, right? So he finds it difficult to come to vertical unless the neck is very long. Therefore, I have come to the conclusion that with him, I only work on feeling soft mouth and relaxed jaw and call that a good contact. Especially very collected, he will have his nose a fair bit in front of the vertical, and any attempt to get him down pushes his weight onto the front legs. Very, very accurate. When not collected, any loss of balance shows massively as the long neck can easily be thrown up and any contact avoided. My mare has a much better built neck and finds correct much more easy. Do you have any observations, ideas for horses like my oldie? Past instructors have always wanted to haul him into a heavy contact. You are on the right track, Morgan. What is the higher priority? Okay, that the horse's head is on the vertical, or that we create a better balance.
Yeah, if the horse has a short, thick neck and a thick, short pole, throat latch area.
Many horses like this, so we know very well.
Bit of an issue, because then you have to make a compromise somewhere, right? I mean, if you collect more, the horse will elevate the neck more, but the more they elevate the neck, the more they need to flex the pole in order to be on the bit. But if the neck is too vertical, right, exactly. If the neck is too short, then they can't do that, right? Then you have to either keep the neck lower, then the head can be closer to the vertical, or you elevate more, and then the nose will be more in front of the vertical.
Allow a little bit more.
And so and I know, we've ridden horses like that. They come, you try to lift the withers up, and then you try to maybe supple the pole. And then if you make the neck too round, the withers drop, right? And then you bring the withers up, and then the head comes up. Maybe he's a little too far in front of the vertical, and you're constantly trying to fine-tune that to find just the best of both worlds, right? And what you can do is with these horses, do flexions at the fall to reshape the musculature around the pole.
You can change it to some degree. Some of this is fleshy tissue. It's muscles and it's flesh that's restricting it to a degree. Now there comes a point where the jawbone hits against the vertebra, and there's nothing you can do. If they have a short throat latch, there's nothing further you can do there. But if it's just the fleshy stuff, if you have a thick-necked horse, and we've ridden a number of horses like that, you can improve that to a degree by doing a number of flexions, and that will help over time to help show the saliva glands how to either move outside of the jaw or move underneath, so that it creates a little room for them.
Yeah, you can change the musculature of the neck to a pretty significant degree. I mean, we had some young Lipizzans in the past with short necks that were very wide and thick at the base, and then a little short at the top. And initially,
fleshy here.
Initially, it looked like they wouldn't be able to go on the bit, but then 6 months later, they were round, and the neck muscles had just completely changed. So then you could see the muscle contours around the pole and the lower jaw and everything. Before it was like all one, pain, like a
block.
Yeah, exactly, one block, and then you could see the contours, the outlines of all the muscles.
The Lego horses or the Playmobil horses,
exactly,
it's just this block.
Right. Yeah, and so there is you can do usually more to change the neck musculature and core musculature than people realize.
Yeah, but you have to, with your horse, you're on the right track, you're thinking the right things. The priority is really the balance. And if you're trying to show this horse, you may get dinged in the show ring because they want to see things just a certain cookie cutter way. And you might have to just decide you're okay with that. You know, if the balance of your horse is your priority, and for me, that is because that's what keeps my horse sound and allows me to progress in the training, which I want to do, then I make that I just accept that. Okay, you know, when I show this horse, I'm going to have judges that just, they don't like it because the horse is not round enough. You know, if you go in there knowing that, then when you get dinged for that, you're like, yep, I expected that, and that's okay. Yeah. I mean, if you're not showing, then no big deal. Okay. So
Cornelia von Wusso had a question about the posting trot, Leichtraben.
Oh, is that what that was?
In rein contact. That's true. You know, when in order to have quiet, stable hands in the rising trot, you have to basically open and close your elbow joints, especially as you rise, right? Your elbows have to open a little bit, they extend, you know, so the hand stays where it is. It doesn't go up. As your body goes up, your hand is not supposed to go up. And when you sit down, the hand is not supposed to come down, but the hand stays in one place and your body goes up and down behind your hand. And that's really an elbow action, right? So the wrists, elbows, shoulders have to be relaxed so that these joints can open and close as you're riding. The same thing happens in the sitting trot in the canter, but to a smaller degree. It's kind of the same thing that, the old teachers always used to talk about having a glass of water in each hand without spilling a drop, so you have to hold your hands so quietly. And that's essentially exactly that thing, that all joints in your body open and close just enough. So it creates that illusion of stillness. In reality, you're actually moving everywhere, but you're moving in sync with the horse, right? Every joint opens and closes. The movements
compensate. Yeah, we had actually 2 comments along this. Patron Hertzberg said the idea is to carry a tray and at the same time to stretch out the stomach. Helped me a lot to get my hands closer to the body. And Melissa Snell said another good one is to imagine you're carrying a washing basket with a full load of washing. I found that could be useful.
True. Yeah, if you carry a heavy load, you bring your pelvis close to that heavy load, because otherwise your arms fall off.
These visualizations, I think, are super helpful. That's why I wanted to read those. I cannot get all of these comments. Gloria asks about the elastic inserts and systems like the Pessoa. Tune in tomorrow. We're going to talk about some of this tomorrow. Let's see. Also, somebody wanted to know about the following of the elbows. That's a big topic, and I don't think we have time to get into that to full extent today. Unless you want to, I don't know if you...
Oh, here Michelle has a follow-up. She says, thank you. I do sometimes have to carry my hands a little higher and do get reprimanded, but now I know that being challenged with short arms, that's sometimes necessary. It is. And I know a lot of teachers tell you hands down, but then your arms are all stretched out, and then your shoulders come forward, and then it compromises the balance. So with shorter arms, you just have to have your hands a little bit higher. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes, not everybody's built like Atokotas, right? He has really long arms and legs and a short upper body, so it's easy for him to sit perfectly, right? But not everybody.
Or easier, I should
exactly.
say.
Not everybody is built that way. So you have to make the best compromise, so that you're effective, you're balanced, you're connected, you can relax, you can live in your seat, you can work with your seat. That's really the important thing. Not just impersonating a dressage rider and posing, right? You don't want to just look like Barbie doll on a horse, like acting like or looking like you're a dressage rider. You have to be one. It
needs to be functional. Serves a purpose. It's not just about creating an image. It's about making the seat really work for you. Right. So it's your tool to train your horse.
Yeah, so the form follows function, right? And the form and function are determined to an extent by the conformation of the horse and the rider. It's like always, the rules are nice to have, but sometimes,
there's
you
sometimes
have to, exactly.
And that's okay.
Be flexible a little bit. Because otherwise you compromise something that's important, right? Just for the sake of the picture, and that would be kind of a bad trade.
So Karen Allred wants to know about the elasticity of the elbows and following, this. I don't know that maybe we can go into it really briefly.
Really briefly, yeah, the following of the horse's neck, and these rowing hands, that's usually a sign that the horse is more or less strung out and not flexing the hips very well.
It's a new thing, it's a new trend, and it has no historical significance.
Yeah, it's usually also means the rider's hips are stiff. In other words, the horse's head and neck is moving too much because they're not really balanced yet. They're not flexing the hind legs enough yet. And the rider is following the horse's movement with the wrong body part. Right? So the riders who do that are not following enough with their pelvis, hip joints, lumbar spine. So they have to compensate by moving their hands a lot. Like you don't see that in the classical schools anywhere. You don't see it in Spain or Portugal or Vienna.
Really in the age of the sport horse, young horse tests, because what they wanted was to be able to get these big, long walks. Okay, and the only way they could do that was by really allowing the horse to stay on the forehand, to stay rather stiff in the hips, and to really allow this movement. And the problem is, and yeah, you get that, but the problem is you can't take that further in the training. At some point, you have to change what you're doing if you want to achieve some higher collection in the walk. Yeah.
I mean, all joints have to move a little bit, in order to really follow and absorb the movement.
Nothing is static,
But it shouldn't be an excessive movement, right? It shouldn't be an eye-catching movement.
It shouldn't be this, and you can feel it, experiment with it, because when you do this, you can feel that the horse then kind of latches on and pulls you apart, you bring it together, pulls you apart, brings you together, pulls you apart. And I played with this once years ago, and with a couple of young horses that I was riding, and to see what happened. It was really interesting. In the long run, it put the horses more on the forehand and tuned them off of my seat. And so I realized that's not what I want. So I started changing what I was doing, and they progressed again.
Yeah, it's a technique that jockeys use at the racetrack to create more speed, right? They create more push. They allow the horse to basically lock on or latch on to the bit. And so they give a little resistance, and then they throw it away. And then the horses start pushing more from behind, and they stretch their head and necks out more, which gives them a longer canter stride and more speed. But in dressage, that's not really useful.
But by all means, what I really always encourage my students to do is to go experiment, just like I did. Absolutely. Because you are your own best teacher, especially if you know the things to look for. Get curious, make an interesting experiment, try it, and then try not doing it, and try it, and try not doing it, and compare. What do you learn? What do you observe?
How you don't break anything by trying the wrong.
You're not going to ruin your horse, but you might not. You might find that it has some limitations. So,
often it's best to really try it out and see what happens. You'll
learn something.
If you don't like the result, change it. Change what you're doing.
Sure.
If you feel like this improves what I'm doing, then you can follow the train of thought and then see at what point is it too much, right? Like some people may be very stiff, and a little bit of that rowing may be just what they need, right, in order not to be stiff and rigid. So they feel like, if I row, then my horse relaxes. And then you can think, well, what if I do a little bit more? Right? If some is good, maybe more is better, right? And then inevitably there come a point when you've exceeded the limit of what is still beneficial, right? And then you feel like, okay, now my horse is getting worse. Now I need to reduce that. And sometimes it's a useful thing to try.
Yes.
Because, you do something different, the horse gets better, great, But, is that as good as it could be? Or is there a little bit more in there? Could I get a little bit more improvement if I do a little bit more? Right? So you have to sometimes really pursue that and study that and see how much do I need to move with this body part or that body part, And
ride the horse. Ride in your body and ride the horse. Don't ride the rules. Pay attention to the rules. But get into what's happening and experiment a little bit. And if you do this conscientiously, that you're aware of not hurting your horse and so on, and not distressing your horse, You're not going to mess anything up. You're just going to learn. Karen then said, such a great explanation. I see elbows moving in tiny movements in the Grand Prix riders, and then the horses can fall right flat on, or I said right flat. That's what I'm thinking, on the forehand. You just described why. Great discussion. And Sue, okay, this is my last one because we have to actually end. But Sue says, I watched an animation of a horse walking and the horse's head moves forward and back. So I thought we were to follow this. In the trot, the head stays still, so our hands stay still.
Yeah,
so
that's
the animations are not, the animations are, it's an animation, right? It's not a highly trained horse, right? Watch advanced classical riders. Watch the riders from Jerez or the Spanish riding school or Lisbon or, you know, any number of the great classical traditions. There's other, but then there's others too, you know. And so watch the teachers or the riders that you want to ride like and see what they're doing and notice the effects on the horse and then compare, you know, and you make your own decision. I'm not going to tell you what you need to do. Yeah.
You know, these animations, you know, they're not terribly precise, so they may have patterned that after a horse. Maybe a horse that's in the pasture somewhere, right? Filming a horse's natural walk or something.
You know, is being ridden and that
so,
way.
Yeah, and of course, in the pasture, they're more strung out, and you know, then they're not really collected in a dressage kind of sense. And so the quality of that walk may not be what you really want to have, right? So
in the long run.
Yeah, so you may have to change the way the horse walks, and then as you change the way the horse walks, also that head and neck movement is going to become smaller because now the hind legs carry more, the hind legs flex a little more, so the whole head and neck becomes much more stable.
Let me throw a chink in this. I had a horse that used to jig in the walk, and I found that by incorporating just a smidgen of a hint of this, it's not throwing, probably nobody saw what I was doing, right? It was this small, subtle communication between the horse. I could keep the horse from jigging. I could keep the horse from getting into this old pattern because once it's a habit, they always resort to it. So I was able to show the horse what I wanted kind of by setting the walk rhythm a little bit through this. And it was very subtle. Like I said, I don't think other people saw it, but so I'm saying there's no hard and fast absolute with that. Try it, see what happens.
Yeah, experiment with it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You're gonna learn something. So I think we should wrap it up with that. There were a couple more questions. I'm so sorry that we couldn't get to them. You guys are awesome. Thank you for being here. We're going to be here again tomorrow at, what time? Hold on. I think we're not at the same time. Yeah, actually, I know we're not at the same time. Tomorrow we're on at 10 a.m. our time. So those of you in the US, you might want to watch the replay unless you want to get up in the middle of the night. You know, some of them do. But you can watch the replay, it's fine. But for those of you in Australia and New Zealand and South Africa, we're going to be just the right time for you. So we're going to be talking about, it was supposed to be 3 tips of what not to do, basically, if you want good contact. But Thomas actually came up with 4. So 3 plus 1. So that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. So if you can't catch it live, please watch the replay. It should be fun.
Yeah, Lynette wants to know when is the replay. It should be up pretty soon.
Oh yeah, as soon as we're done, Facebook takes like 2 minutes to process it, and then you can watch the replay. Yeah, so just refresh our page and you'll be able to see it. So thank you, everybody, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. Yeah. Bye.
Bye.